What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online Show. Zach Abolverdi and Nick Torre here, and we've got some recruiting to talk about. Big day for Napier and his staff on Thursday as the Gators picked up two commitments, one from the transfer portal, one from the high school ranks, and the one from the portal is significant for a couple reasons. And we'll obviously open the show with Jason Zandamela, the former USC offensive lineman. We'll also get into McLeod's recruitment as well, the defensive lineman that the Gators landed, and also some other targets to be on the watch out for in the weeks to come and maybe even in the days to come. We'll also discuss this recent draft and some of the conversation that has come out of that, Nick, but we'll save that.
Some of the conversation that you started.
Yeah, well, I wasn't the only one that was thinking it. But obviously a lot to unpeel there, but we'll save that for the end. But we've got a lot to talk about from the recruiting trail as the Gators really had a huge Thursday. It started with the commitment from the high school ranks as they land defensive lineman Jeremiah McLeod, and then they come right behind him with Jason Zandamela joining their offensive line as well. So we'll get into those commitments and kind of what they mean for Florida. But before we do that, Nick, how are you doing as you gear up for this doubleheader?
Yeah, going to be a long day. Florida, Tennessee got rained out Thursday night. And you can't play when you have a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series. You can't play on Sunday. So with that not being an option, 2 9-inning games on Friday, starting at 3 back-to-back weekends with a doubleheader. I'm getting too old.
Never mind. I'm not going to ask. Never mind. I'm not going to ask. I just hope everything goes smooth. Yeah, but this is a huge series for Florida.
Massive. Florida has to, I think the magic number is 5 more SEC wins. So that's 3 against Tennessee, 3 Kentucky, 3 Georgia. Got to win 5 to secure for sure an NCAA tournament bid. Kevin O'Sullivan has never missed the NCAA tournament, so we're in uncharted waters here.
Yeah, and we're in uncharted waters talking about baseball at the front of the show. I mean,
well, it's quick. It's quick.
But all your followers are getting a treat right here. And you guys, I got a treat for y'all as well. If you're not subscribed to Gators Online, you can use the code UF1 when you go to sign up and get 2 months for just $1. And we got a lot of great stuff going down, not only on the recruiting front, but obviously Nick's baseball coverage as that gets ready to heat up. And look, summer is right around the corner, and you guys know what that means. Camps, recruiting visits. I think we are done mostly with the transfer portal, but not quite yet. So make sure that you stay tuned to all the coverage on that front as well. Again, when you go to sign up, if you're not subscribed, you can get in the door for just $1, get 2 months with the code UF1. So make sure that you guys take advantage of that. And Florida took advantage of Jason Zandamela wanting to come back home, Nick. He goes out there to USC, a member of the 2024 class. And 24/7 Sports had him as the #1 guard in the country, a top 50 recruit. Big get for Lincoln Riley out of the Sunshine State. He goes out there for a semester, participates in spring ball, and decides, you know what, I need to be closer to home. You were there to interview him, Nick, after his official visit. You put in the pick afterwards. I think that there was probably confidence in Florida's camp that if they were going head-to-head with UCF, that they were going to win that battle, but they still had to win it, and they did.
Yeah, he had been to a couple games, but it's a way different experience when you take a visit not on a game day. The coaches and staff and everyone is so busy on a game day. So yes, you get the environment, you get to feel the swamp on a game day, but you don't get that one-on-one time. And it's a really interesting case because originally from Mozambique, Africa, comes over in 2020, is living with a host family in Clearwater. And I think he probably thought, I moved way farther to get to America. California will probably be fine. And quickly, one of the things we talked to him about was you don't realize how far away you are from home until you're in college, and now you have to cook, clean, get yourself up and to class and practice and all this. And I think he just realized quickly, hey,
Yeah.
I've got to get back close. It was interesting. I think Florida State was in it for his original recruitment. And I thought maybe they would get back in, but when we talked to him, he told us I'm narrowed it down to UCF in Florida. And I think the difference was seeing all the facilities that Florida has recently built and being able to sit down and really get to know the coaches.
No doubt. And this is significant from a ranking standpoint. If you're somebody that cares about that stuff and all the good work that we do at On3 with our industry rankings and kind of projecting not only the high school recruits, but the transfers as well. And just looking at it from that standpoint, this is a big pickup for Florida. He is Florida's second top 50 transfer in this cycle, along with Joey Slackman, who was ranked 38th overall. Zandamela is ranked 29th overall, the number 2 interior offensive lineman in all of the portal for this class, according to the On3 industry rankings. So, and then this spring portal, this last window that came up, he was the number 1 offensive lineman available. So they came into this cycle. Nick and I both talked about needing an offensive guard. Would you have liked to have gotten a multi-year veteran with starting experience? Yes. Doesn't look like there was a guy like that out there for Florida that, both all their goals align, they check boxes, but this one did. And you're able to go get a guy, bring him back to the Sunshine State, very highly rated prospect. Now that you add him to the guard position, he's your highest rated guard at that spot. Of all the linemen that Florida has at that position, he's the highest rated. He has, according to the rankings, the most upside. Now, Florida's got some other guards, Nick, at that position, and I think they're set with their starters. But we talked about all along, who's going to be the backups? Like that was not – it was not anything that was set in stone. As spring played out, we heard and found out that Bryce Lovett had a really good spring, and I think that he solidified himself as, one of their backup options there and a guy that they have confidence in. But just calling it like it is, Nick, most of their guards are 3 stars, and most of the guards that they have were the lowest ranked signees in their respective class. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't be great players. A lot of linemen end up being rated 3 stars, but Zandamela has upside potential. So you're adding him to that room, immediately upgrades that spot, creates more competition. At the very least, he's probably going to crack the 2 deep, and he's going to be pushing for playing time pretty early because of that skill set.
Yeah, and I think the interesting part that we shouldn't overlook is he's so new to football.
Correct.
So already highly rated and still learning the game. So can he crack the 2 deep? If you're going to stick with George at right guard, I think Lovett is a guy that they think can play tackle or guard.
He probably have to beat out Christian Williams,
right,
who's been on campus 3 years, so he's more developed. He's had more time. But like I said, Zandamel's got more upside. Can he come in, pick things up quickly, show that ability? He's going to be – the job is there. The opportunity is there because they need help at guard. Again, I think it would have been ideal for them to get somebody that's more inclined to push Damian George or Najee Harris.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, he makes the room better, and he is definitely a future starter. Like if he doesn't start as a true freshman, that's fine. But he will be a guy that has all the tools to start for them for several years.
Yeah, huge pickup. Fortunate Florida had a great second signing class with freshmen who signed elsewhere only to change their minds.
Yeah. Well, and it's crazy, Nick, Florida came into this spring window with 16 scholarship offensive linemen. And, now they have 17, but they've added 2 true freshmen to that group. which is not maybe what I think people thought or expected going into the portal window, because you're thinking transfers, but they had their 25 commit reclassify and sign for 24, and now they add Zandamela, who's part of the 24 class as well. So they've got now 17 offensive linemen on scholarship, Nick, and 9 are freshmen, including
Freshman
6
or redshirt freshman.
Yes, and 6 true freshmen. So the majority of them are true freshmen. So definitely young there, but a lot of talent, and you know they've beefed up that spot for sure. They got a lot of bodies there, Nick.
A lot of bodies, and I think the younger guys especially are talented. I still would like to see Rod Kearney play guard or try him out there, but I get what they're doing. But yeah, I think there's a good mix because you have some veteran guys, Barber, Crenshaw, Dixon. I guess Cam Waits is still a veteran guy despite not playing as much as those other guys, but then also the talented freshman class. And I think that goes up and down the roster. Like last year, the secondary was so young, and you go and you add 3 seniors to it. So a good mix. Our buddy Cole Kublick, very high or much higher than most on the Gators, and that's something he pointed to, the veteran leadership that they added.
Yeah, and let's get into those comments, Nick, because you had a story up, and he covered a lot of ground there on that episode that he had. Shout out to Cole. What were some of your thoughts? I really enjoyed his thoughts about the offensive line, because that's where he's got the most expertise, and he gave a lot of it.
He's high on the offensive line. He thinks that they're deeper than they have been, and they might be. But I think the biggest point he was making was Graham Mertz is not getting the respect that he should be getting. And he even made the point, if you put, he said, if you did the old, I think it was a Pepsi commercial where they blindfolded people and had them drink Pepsi and Coke and then pick one. He said, if you did that test with Graham Mertz's numbers and asked, would you want that quarterback? Everyone would say yes, but not getting talked about. And if you put him, I think he said if Auburn's quarterback had that season last year, they'd be getting a ton of love. So I thought that made sense, but then I differ with Cole about optimism with the offensive line. But I do think Florida's quarterback room, and you mentioned, or you wrote about Jesse Simonton. He ranked the quarterback room. I love Florida's quarterback room, and I think you will get DJ Lagway involved. But that schedule still,
and he addressed it though.
Yeah,
he addressed that as well, and he said he agrees with Napier's assessment on, hey, I'd take a home opener against Miami versus a road game at Utah. Give me that every time. And then Cole says they don't have to go to Kentucky. Florida State is on the road, but look what they lost. Look what LSU's offense lost. Mississippi State is a rebuild. He doesn't know what Texas A&M is going to be. So, again, as we've said, there's that opportunity in that front half of the schedule for Florida to get off to a good start. But a lot of those matchups are, as Nick likes to say, must not lose games, because those wins are hard to come by later in the schedule, and he admits that. But yeah, I mean, Miami, that's going to be an interesting matchup, man. I can't wait for it.
Miami loaded up in the portal, but that's going to be a tough. It should be a night game. They haven't announced it yet, right?
I don't know, but I would assume that it's got to be a night game.
Should be a night game. That should be a great environment. I think that's a game in that environment, kind of like Utah in Billy's first game, that you figure out a way to win. The crowd helps. It's week 1. Miami got a lot in the portal, but that means you're working in a lot of new pieces and a lot of new players who are playing their first game. No kickoff time yet. But also I think because you're home, and I think I mentioned this before, because you're home, there's more pressure on Billy. Like, it's easier to use it's a road game first week as like an excuse for Mario being on the road than it is for Billy. But we're not picking it. I think we'll pick in June when I go 10-0 again. but I think I'll probably be picking Florida in that one.
Oh man, that's looking at that graphic from that summer's got to eat you up still, Nick.
Tough.
The foresight that you had.
I was 4th and 17, and Graham Mertz not getting hurt from being 12-0 potentially.
I like it. All right. Well, before we get into some more transfer portal talk, I want to give a shout out to myperfectfranchise.net. If you are ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, looking for a side hustle while working your current job, or wanting to diversify, build wealth, and leave a legacy, Andy can help. He's a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help you if you have any questions about business ownership. You can learn more and contact Andy anytime at myperfectfranchise.net or calling or texting him at 404-973-9901. And Nick, the Gators are now have addressed one of their biggest needs in the portal by getting Jason Zandamela. There's also not much room to work with, but they are still targeting a player reportedly at another position of need, and that is wide receiver. And it's interesting because the timing of this could not set up more perfectly for Florida in terms of being able to sell something, because you just had Ricky Pearsall go in the first round of the NFL draft, which we'll get into a little bit later in this show. But that becomes the 5th wide receiver coached by Napier that's gone in the first round, and at the 4th different school. Now, 2 of those 5 receivers are former Arizona State guys. And now the most recent one being Ricky, that's something that you have to sell to Elijah Badger, who is a top 100 transfer in this year's 2024 cycle, a guy that entered this spring. He's got ties, obviously, to Florida, being a former teammate of Ricky Pearsall. Would imagine that there's probably even more ties and things that go into Napier and his time at Arizona State as well. So he is in the portal. He has already visited Washington, and according to Pete Nakos of On3, is lining up visits to both Florida and Arizona. Gotta like Florida's chances there if those are the schools in the mix. But what are your thoughts on Elijah, Nick, and kind of what he could potentially do if the stars align and things work out and they are able to add him to the room?
I mean, just from on the field, exactly what you need. He's a playmaker. Last year, 65 catches, 713 yards, 3 touchdowns, 70 receptions for 866 and 7. He gets yards after the catch. He had 24 explosive catches, 15 or more. And I'm reading through my story, and he had 41 of Arizona State's 145 passing first downs. This is a kid that immediately comes in, competes to start, is somebody that takes pressure off Eugene Wilson. And I think you need to talk to Ricky, be like, hey, Rick, I need you to call your buddy. But like you said, perfect timing, because Ricky last year, maybe a 3rd rounder, decides to come back, continues to develop. So there's already a blueprint and a path that you can point to and show Badger and say, look, this is all in front of you. Yeah. But this is the kind of player that I think I was talking about right after spring when I was like, hey, Florida needs to upgrade receiver. They weren't just going to add somebody to add somebody. This is a player who can come in, compete, and makes you better right away.
Yeah, and now I think Florida, the next step is obviously getting him on campus and getting around him. Everything's got to make sense. Just because the opportunity's there, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be a slam dunk. He's got to like it. Florida's got to like him. The visit needs to go well. And you've also got to contend with some other schools that are recruiting him too. Washington did just go through a coaching change, but they are a team that just played in the college football playoff, have a lot to offer. I do think that Florida being in the SEC, if they decide that like they are all in on him and are like putting Ricky Pearsall on the phone to recruit him, the fact that they have that track record now with Ricky where they show that he was able to come to the SEC and improve his draft stock significantly, could be something that maybe sells Elijah, more on Florida as opposed to Arizona or Washington, which is not really going out of his comfort zone, so to speak. So we'll see how that plays out, and if and when he makes it to campus and how that visit goes. But it seems like, Nick, he's probably, I would imagine, the last guy to monitor here in this portal season, because I don't think there's another receiver that would make as much sense as he does.
No, I'm blanking on his name. Justin Ross, the Colorado State receiver. I thought he would have made sense. But yeah, like Billy and this staff just don't view the second portal as being as deep or as talented. I say it all the time about offensive line. You're not shopping at Nordstrom in the portal for offensive linemen. But I like the addition. Obviously, Zandamela, love that, especially long term. And then this would be an impact receiver that helps you right away. But yeah, I don't see outside of this. I think they'd stand pat if this doesn't work.
Yeah, you've got Franklin from Ole Miss, but can't transfer to Florida, and he's a top one. He's a top 100 transfer. But like that's what you're looking for, is somebody of that caliber, somebody that's gonna come in and be able to start and contend for a starting job and play starting minutes and provide starting production. Badger 100% can come in and do that. So we'll see how that plays out. But how do you feel about this transfer class as a whole now, Nick? The Gators added 10 guys in the January-February period, 11 if you count Grimsley. I don't. But, I guess he technically was a transfer. But, how do you feel about this class? Because we kind of knew going into the spring that if they added some guys, it weren't going to be many. We were thinking maybe 2 to 3.
I think you hit needs. Grimsley, I think because he practiced in their bowl practice, he had to transfer. He's going to be a player. I think Asa Turner, you got starters. Asa Turner, DK, George Gumm's the guy that they talk really, really highly of, and he's still kind of green to playing edge. Crenshaw Dixon's a starter. Douglas is going to play a ton. Slackman's going to play a ton. It's kind of like the past 2 years where they haven't hit on the guys that were super popular or like the highest rated guys, but they filled needs with good players. So I like this class. I think you hit a bunch of needs, especially in the secondary, which I think is one of the most improved position groups on the roster, on the team. So I like the class overall.
Yeah, and I think that as you look moving forward, they have to hit during that winter portal period. Like,
yeah,
when they wrap up each season and they go into that off season with needs and they know what they have in their class and who's committed and who they land on the early signing period. Like, after that, that's when you feel your roster needs. Because what happened, you can't count on somebody like Jason Zandamela, or an early enrollee, deciding to get homesick or not like, where he's at and wanting to come back. And Florida got really blessed with that scenario a few times. Now, obviously coaching changes contributed to the other ones, but to get DeAndre Robinson after he goes to Texas to come back to Florida, to get Jameer Grimsley to go to Alabama, come back, and now you get Zandamela. Like, that's 3 quality 2024 recruits that you just added. But 2 of those guys again happened during that first window, and that's when you get the most bang for your buck, for sure.
Yeah, and that's how this staff approaches the portal windows.
So as we put a bow on this, we're talking about one transfer class. Let's get into the draft class next. Don't like seeing that headline right there for the folks that are just listening and not watching. We've got a caption on the screen that reads, Florida has its worst draft class since 1980. And if you don't know the significance of that year, that is coming off Florida's 0-10-1 season in 1979, worst year in school history.
Give them help, hell.
And led to Florida's worst draft class until this year, when the Gators had just one selection. At least it was a first-round pick.
Yeah.
They just had Scott Brantley go in the 3rd round, which is funny because the only pick that Dan Mullen had was a 3rd-round linebacker.
Hopper. Yeah, that was one thing because people started talking about it, and I was like, well, there's so much transferring now. I always find it funny when you get multiple schools putting edits out when someone gets transferred or when someone gets drafted.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'd said it before. Like, Dan came in and won with McElwain's players, and then when he had to start winning with what they had recruited, it got weird quick.
And it wasn't complete whiffs.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't all duds. Like, they signed some talented players. They signed 1st-round picks, Anthony Richardson, Kyer Elam, 2nd-round pick, Jervon Dexter. But by and large, like, the cover was bare. We've heard it, we've seen it, but like these results just confirm it and show it. And I understand that because of coaching changes and because of transfer portal and because of NIL, that maybe some guys that would have come out by now in most years or way things were 5 years ago would have already been drafted and are still in school. And maybe that is the case, but the type of players that Florida needs to sign and needs to have in abundance on the roster don't stay in school 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
They're 3 and 4 and out. And as all coaches say, every time they sign a recruiting class, we will see in 3 to 4 years how good it is. And
like, you've graded us now, but we won't know the real grade for 3 to 4 years.
And we found it this year. You can give all the reasons and maybe some excuses, some legitimate, but at the end of the day, Florida had a draft class and a draft year, and they just had one selection. And that one selection was a transfer portal addition, not even from the former coach, whose signees had now progressed to the point that they were eligible to get drafted this year. I mean, you're looking at guys from Florida's 2019 and Florida's 2020 class that should have been getting drafted here in 2024. And of those classes, as I wrote this week at Gators Online, 60% of the 2019 class has transferred. 70% of the 2020 class has transferred. 70%. But it's not like those guys transferred to other schools and then got drafted. At least not yet. And at least not in this cycle. It didn't happen. There's guys like Chris Bogle and Xavier Henderson that are on their 6th year. Like, could they get drafted potentially the next year? Maybe. I think Bogle can. But, like, ideally for Florida, Bogle would have been here for 3-4 years tops and already been drafted.
Yeah.
Like that's the type of player that he was supposed to be. And I think there's a few of those examples, unfortunately, from those years. And again, just not enough NFL talent. And that is part of the reason why Florida is in the situation in. It's not all. There's other blame to go around, and there's other issues to be solved. But this is a big part of it, Nick. They've been devoid of talent, and this draft class speaks to that.
Yeah, and I think it was just if you go back and look, they were all ranked well. You know, I'm looking at 2020, ranked 8th.
Yeah, 8th and 9th. They were both top 10 classes.
But then you look at like these guys, just the highest ranked recruit was Gervon, great drafted. Then Derek Wingo, Hendo, Jahari Rogers, Jaquavion Frazier, Ethan Pouncey. I'm just like going through this, and there's just a lot of guys, and some just didn't pan out. They also, I think, recruited kind of like they were still at Mississippi State, where they took chances, took flyers on guys, developmental guys, signed guys who they knew weren't going to be able to get into school, but helped bump the class up.
Yeah, the RJ Hendersons of the world.
Yeah. That I think that class had several guys that never
3 guys
up.
that didn't make it to campus in the 19 class. So a lot of smoke and mirrors there, Nick.
A lot of smoke and mirrors. The house of cards came tumbling.
And I put out the story, and I think most Florida fans gave it to Dan when we highlighted some of the shortcomings of his 2 recruiting classes that should have been getting drafted in 2024. But not everybody wanted to point the finger at Dan that I saw. Like there was definitely still some folks that either said it's too long. Some of that blame falls on Napier. He should have brought in more players that I guess would have now been drafted. I don't know. Or, does he and his staff take some blame for not developing more guys to get drafted? But if they didn't recruit them in their, you know what I mean? It's a tough. They did develop some guys like Amari Burney. I mean, I didn't view him as a draft pick going into 2022, and he definitely played his way into getting drafted. Obviously, what they did with Graham Mertz, like they developed him.
I think they're good at developing. I think where people are saying it's too long is what you can do now in the transfer portal. I don't think you need to go full Coach Prime and completely like home reno, demolish your roster every offseason. But I think the frustration is you could have had a turnaround. It's not, 10 years ago where guys can't transfer. If they do, they have to sit out a year. You didn't see as much transferring. You can overhaul your roster. Mike Norvell has done that at FSU. I still think it's more of a quick fix Band-Aid, and you still have to build your roster through high school. And that's what this staff believes, and that's what they've done. They thought they had time to build a roster in a program through high school and then supplement. But I think that's where the frustration is, especially when you see other schools. Miami went heavy in the portal 2 years ago, Florida State heavy in the portal, and you're just seeing other teams, rivals, getting big name guys and changing their rosters completely, which helps you win quicker.
Yeah. And I think, Nick, and we've heard a lot about this in talking to folks, but you and I both know, and I think fans remember, like Billy did not run off a bunch of players right away.
Right.
I think some of that was intentional, but some of that was because he couldn't. I think it took Florida to get to a point from navigating its roster, learning its roster, getting NIL right, getting that structured to where they could kind of clean house, so to speak, and then have the means to go attract more players. And I don't think that first year they were ready to do it, could do it, because they didn't have as the mass exodus that didn't come until after the 2000 until after the second season,
Right.
Because now, I mean, from the 2019, 2020, and then 2018 class, even they've had over 50 outgoing transfers. Like by now, a lot of those guys are gone, but initially they weren't gone like that first spring. Like most of those guys stayed through that first year, that first 22 season, and then guys started to move on. Florida started to get to a point where they could. I mean, the last two classes they've signed over 10 transfers, so they've been able to do that. I think one thing that you can take solace in if you're a Florida fan is, like, would you have liked to see more transfers early on and guys that could have flipped the roster and changed the results quicker? Yes. But like I just said, I don't think this staff felt like they had the means to do that yet. But the one good thing that you can say is for the guys that they did get, like Osiris Torrance might as well have been a first-round pick, went high second round, and then the next year they had Ricky Pearsall go in the first round. So they basically, I mean, two of their transfers have been really high draft picks, and Osiris Torrance obviously had a monster rookie season. So, like, if you continue to get more of that out of your transfers that you're adding, I mean, that's going to stack up and make a difference eventually.
Yeah, that first transfer class was, I think the hits were the UL guys and Ricky, obviously. Yeah. But also, like, you don't know.
Like 5 guys, though, right? 5 or 6 guys. Like, they didn't have a lot that first year.
Yeah, I'm on it now. I think, well, it was Kimber, which didn't pan out. Jack Miller, I think things go differently with him if he doesn't get the injury than Montrell, Osiris, Ricky, and Cam Waits. Yeah. But also, I think you can bring in a player that you think is good on the field that just doesn't help your locker room as well. And I think they've done that in the portal and have had to rectify the situation, I think you can call it. But it's a weird dynamic where you're trying to find somebody who can help you on the field and you're having to move quick, and you could just bring in somebody who's like a cancer in the locker room. So I think they're very selective in that sense. But you're going to miss in the portal. Like this time last year, we were all like, what are you doing getting a Wisconsin quarterback to replace Anthony Richardson? They got Cam Jackson, Caleb Banks, starters. Keontae Goodwin, I think, could have been a starter if not for his situation. But like last year's class, I think there were probably more misses than hits, but the big hit is obviously Graham Mertz. So I think you're going to get hits and misses in the portal. Like you're in the portal for a reason.
He could have came out and got drafted. That would have been another guy.
Graham?
Yeah.
Cam would have gotten drafted too if he would have come out.
Yeah. So, it maybe hasn't been enough time yet to have Napier and his staff's players to see the draft results yet, unless it was with the transfer guys. Obviously, none of the recruits have been here long enough to get drafted. But they've had some transfers, and again, 2 of them really good results there. But this 25 class, like Nick, you did the players to watch, like the guys that could get drafted. The record's 9. School record is 9. Like they could get close to it. Like they're not going to have one guy drafted next year. I'll tell you that. I mean, they're going to approach 6, 7, 8. I mean, we can pull up your story, but there's
I just did. Mertz will get drafted. Montreal should. Asa Turner should. Asa Turner should. Cam Jackson should. If Crenshaw Dixon has a good season, he'll get drafted.
That's 6.
Barber should get drafted.
7.
Slackman probably drafted. DJ Douglas. potential. And then you have some younger guys that could leave: Shamar James, Devin Moore, Caleb Banks, other seniors, Zip, Bridges, Damian George, and DK. A lot of guys.
I mean, just off of the seniors, you could get close to 6, 7, 8 maybe. And then if you have a couple guys leave earlier, one of these seniors has a great year. It'll be a good draft class for Florida. We're gonna have to write a lot more shells, Nick.
Yeah, I forget who I was talking with. It was at Florida's Pro Day, and we knew that Ricky wasn't going to be doing anything. And I was like, man, this is a light pro day, maybe the lightest one since I've been here. And then the person I was talking with, we started going down the list of like what pro day could be next year. And it could be a loaded pro day with all those guys we just talked about.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And again, like, knock on wood. I mean, Shamar James has a healthy year. Devin Moore has a healthy year. Both of those guys could be gone. There's more talent, and that's what you need to make a difference. So before we get into our final segment, I want to give a shout out to Prairie Dental Center. The doctor is a UF grad who's practiced in Gainesville for 3 decades and developed a deep understanding of how to diagnose and treat various dental problems, along with advanced skills and knowledge to provide better care to his patients. If you're having dental concerns or just need a cleaning, Prairie Dental Center offers a wide range of options to meet your needs. Give their office a call at 352-373-3431. Tell them Gators Online sent you, and your new patient exam will be free. Before we get into our baseball segment, I do want to discuss the commitment that the Gators picked up from the high school ranks. Jeremiah McLeod, their 4th pledge in the 2025 class, and really like how this one played out, Nick. First of all, to go and get this pledge, I mean, this is important for Florida. I think obviously, Gerald Chapman is a guy that, we've kind of, we've come to know this spring, and, you kind of figure that the way that he's been a hit on the practice field and certainly around us, that he's going to be a hit on the recruiting trail. And that's already shown up, I think, with this addition. But really good. I mean, this guy was committed to Mississippi State. Florida was pushing really hard for him, and then he pulls the trigger for the Gators. So great get for them.
Yeah, he told Keith Niebuhr it was the relationship with the coaches. He 6'3", 285, good size for a kid who's still a junior in high school, going into his senior year. And I think it's for Florida. I don't know that we ever had questions about how Chapman would recruit, but I think it's important for him to come in and flex a little bit, get a commitment early, show everyone that, hey, I'm going to be making moves in this state. Florida's class is far from over. Only what, five guys in the class right now?
4 guys.
Four
guys.
Far from over.
Far from over. You gotta like some of the guys that they've added already. But what I love about this is, I mean, he's from Havana, Florida, Nick, which is 30 minutes away from Tallahassee. So he's a Tallahassee kid. As you know, landing a kid from that area that FSU wants is never easy. And again, he had been committed to Mississippi State, but Florida had been pushing for him. But what was great about how this all played out is FSU went to visit him on May 1st at practice, and kind of late to the party, offered him a scholarship. And he put it out on Twitter. I mean, this is obviously a big offer for him. Now the Gators were also there to see him that same day. So while Florida State is there offering him and trying to, throw their hat in the ring, shout out to Swerve on Twitter as he pointed this out to me. You know, FSU coaches showed up to practice and offered Chapman assistants already locking him up. He gets an offer from Florida State. The next day he's going public to Florida. So the Gators just kind of ahead of the competition there. And to have it play out in that fashion where you're pulling a kid from FSU's own backyard, you were on him early, you offered him before him, they finally show up and offer him, and then the next day he just commits to you and kind of gives them a gut punch. That's great theater, Nick. That's why we love to follow recruiting.
That's Cruton, yeah. And listen, it's May 3rd, so FSU's not going to stop recruiting him.
No, they won't.
But little victories.
Love how that played out, though. Yes,
little victories.
Yeah, you take those small wins. So look, I think Nick, the Gators will take any little victories that they can get this weekend against number 3 Tennessee. They don't care if it is low scoring. They don't care if it's by one run. They will take it. Isn't that right, my friend?
Yeah. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday series. I don't know if it's an NCAA or an SEC rule. When that is the case, you can't play Sunday. So it was a beautiful day yesterday, all day.
Yeah.
Hot
until it was time for baseball.
Beautiful day until right at 7:00. Pierce Capalla, who we've talked about his injury history, so you have to be careful with him, goes through his entire warm-up. We sing the anthem, and then they put us in a weather delay. So Pierce instantly is no longer going to be available on Thursday night, and I wonder if you can even throw him this weekend, maybe Saturday, in relief of Jack. But it's not ideal for Florida, especially because Pierce is, I think this would have been his 5th appearance back. He's starting to get better, starting to go deeper into games. And Florida's sitting right now. I think they could get away with 4 SEC wins and then a win or 2 in Hoover to make the NCAA tournament. But they need 5 of the 9. And you've got Tennessee, really good ball club. Last time Tennessee was in Gainesville, swept the Gators, put on the football helmets when they went to shower at Ben Hill Griffin. Florida's just at the point right now where every game, even the midweek games, you have to win. They're a bubble team. I spent all last year telling you that Hoover and the SC tournament doesn't matter because Florida's never a bubble team. Hoover will matter this year. So Florida's going to have to find a way to get at least two against Tennessee, and then 2 against Kentucky, who is faltering of late, but for most of the year was leading the SEC. And then you have to go on the road to Georgia, the clash of the home run leaders, Charlie Condon and Jack Caglione. So
love it.
I like that. I'll make it quick, but I like what Florida's been doing the last 3-4 games. They're bunting a little bit more. They're not taking those huge hacks. They're doing some more of like the little things that help you win baseball games, but they've dug themselves a hole. And I think the only thing that you can, or one of the things you can take positively from it, is now every game feels like a playoff game, feels like a tournament game. So you kind of have that edge every time you go to the ballpark.
Well, they're going to need it this weekend because tough matchup, but man, if Florida can pull this out, they're going to set themselves up good for regionals. So we'll see. I might have to sneak over there, Nick.
What do you want to know this year?
I want to know. We'll see if my services are needed. I got to check with Micah Gator.
We might have to send you to Athens.
I've never been. been. And
I don't think we will.
Yeah, not for football. Not anytime soon, at least. Again, want to encourage all Florida fans out there, if you're not subscribed to Gators Online, make sure you take advantage of our special promo code right now, UF1, to get 2 months for just $1. And we will keep tracking these last few weeks here as we figure out what happens with Elijah Badger, how his visit goes, when it's going to happen. Make sure you guys follow all of that, as well as all the recruiting coverage going down. Nick's baseball coverage this weekend. You guys can keep up with all of it by taking advantage of that promo code. So we'll be back next week with a new episode. Make sure you guys like and subscribe, and we'll see how things play out with the Gators and Vols this weekend. Nick, good luck to you in the ballpark.
Long day.
Yes, I'll be thinking of you, my friend. Until next time, for Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Abolverdi. We'll see you guys.